Okay, in this video, we're going to make the distinction between a definition, a postulate, and a theorem. So here I've got a very simple geometry definition of ray. And I want you to see how the definition of a ray, which is formally defined inside geometry, is dependent on the undefined terms point and line. Basically, a ray is a line that starts at one point and extends in one direction only. And that direction that it extends is given by a second point. So a ray is a line that starts in one place and heads off in one direction. And you can see that definition, ray, is dependent on point and line, two of our undefined terms. Definitions abound in geometry. Every time we do something new, we're going to encounter a new definition, and you'll get good at recognizing them. Now, the next thing that I would like to talk about is a postulate. And a postulate is not a definition. It is a statement that is deemed to be so obvious, so simple, so self-evident that it doesn't require any proof. For example, one of the first things we learn, one of the first postulates we learn in geometry is that through any 2 points, again, heading back to our undefined terms, there exists exactly one line. And that is fairly obvious as long as we accept line to be this straight thing right here. Of course, there's as many curves as we want to go through. You can find as many curves as you want through any 2 points. But when it comes to lines, as we understand them from our undefined terms, the notion that through any 2 points there exists one and only one line is pretty obvious. It's very self-evident. So a postulate is a statement that does not require proof. And there are very few of these in geometry. We want to keep the number of things that our system is based on that we're just going to accept as self-evident very small. So there's only 8 to 10 postulates in geometry that we're going to learn. And really only 4 or 5 of those that we're going to consistently use. So postulate, statement, so simple that it's taken on faith. A theorem is similar to a postulate, but it may or may not be self-evident or obvious, and in either case, it requires proof. And how do you prove a theorem? You use your definitions and your postulates, and after you've proved a lot of theorems, you can use the theorems you've already proved to prove even more theorems. So, for example, one thing we're going to learn about in geometry is called vertical angles. So we'll start with the definition part. If I have 2 lines intersecting like this, we call 1 and 2 vertical angles and 3 and 4 vertical angles. There is that's just the definition, vertical angles. Now the theorem part comes in is what could we prove is true about vertical angles? And so just by looking at the picture, it certainly looks like vertical angles might be equal to each other. So how would we set about proving that? Well, we know that a straight line has an angle measure of 180 degrees. So that means angle 1 plus angle 3, or the measure of those 2 angles, equals 180 degrees. And then we have another straight line here. So, again, using that same fact, angle 2 plus angle 3 equals 180 degrees, because that's just a straight line, definition of a straight line or of supplementary. And then if this stuff equals 180, and this stuff equals 180, then it stands to reason that the sum of angle 1 and angle 3, or the sum of their measures rather, is equal to the sum of angle 2 and angle 3, because they both add up to 180, so that means they equal to each other. And then we can solve or simplify this statement real quick. Subtract angle 3 from both sides, and all you're left with is angle 1 equal to angle 2. So it turns out that the vertical angles are always congruent. So this is an example of a simple proof. They're often dependent on algebra, other theorems that we've already proved. They're dependent on known definitions and on the postulates. So as a quick review, a definition is just a description of a thing dependent on the undefined terms. A postulate is a self-evident statement that is so obvious it is deemed we can accept it without proof. And then a theorem is a statement that is true, but it must be proven to be true.